Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, also available on all leading digital audio channels. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by sending through your questions, your comments, or your feedback on email, editor@sandtontimes.co.za, or connect on social media @Sandton Times, and also visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And a very special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time. If that's you, if you just pulled up a chair, if you just tuned in, if you just downloaded this show, welcome to you. Join the club, join the family, join the community. It's the Sandton Times Hour Nation in Johannesburg and Pretoria, across South Africa and everywhere else in the world, online or on air, wherever you are. And if you're a regular listener especially, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. And Vincenzo, so good to see you again. Nice to see you behind the mixing desk. It's been a while. I'm back from Italy, and what a trip it has been. And thanks for holding the fort. Also, the entire team that makes all of this happen every single week. It's so much easier doing these trips when you know that everything is in good hands. And sadly, I didn't get a chance to visit your hometown of Bologna, but there was certainly tons of other things to see and taste. And I'll be putting some of those ideas, some of those thoughts, some of those experiences in a show. We'll put some time aside in the coming weeks to tell you all about it, especially if you've ever had places like Venice, Florence, Rome, or fair Verona on your bucket list. I'm happy to share some of those impressions with you, and maybe it inspires you to plan a trip in the close or distant future to Italy. It was certainly one to be remembered, and a lot of takeaways. Some fascinating things I'm going to be sharing with you over the coming weeks from that particular trip. And I hope you've continued to tune in and maybe catch up on some listening. If you missed the past 2 weeks, there's always the archive as well that you can dive into on podcast. And it's certainly great to be back in the driving seat and to take you into the last quarter of 2024, and then, of course, beyond into 2025, God willing. So here we are. What are we talking about this week? In a bit, I'll be catching up with a businessman and now author about his harrowing experience when a necessary operation became the starting point for years of addiction. And he's written a book about it, and I'll be chatting to him shortly. Don't miss this one. Then I had a chance to experience a sake tasting right here in our own city, and I had a chance to learn a little bit more about this Japanese spirit, and I'll be sharing some of the findings with you, an interview that I did, so stay listening for that. And finally, Sandton was buzzing with the sounds of Formula One 2 Sundays ago, and I thought, yeah, you know what, why not share a few clips from the press conference that happened just before that day kicked off. And of course, there was a legendary British driver of the sport in that press conference. I'm going to be sharing that with you. All this and more coming up in the next hour.
Show some love.
subscribe, share,
Leave a review and rating for the Sandton Times Hour
on your favorite podcast app now.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So in 2018, Antonio Iozzo, CEO of IUM, the largest independently owned underwriting management agency in Southern Africa, suffered a near-fatal superbike accident resulting in severe injuries, particularly to his back. And following the surgery that came as a result of this injury, he was prescribed a powerful opioid called OxyNorm, and he unknowingly spiraled into a 5-year addiction, struggling to balance his multi-billion rand business empire with his personal turmoil. And while managing major projects and hiding his dependency, Antonio's life unraveled as he battled to control this addiction. And ultimately, through sheer determination, he resolved to overcome the opioid crisis and reclaim his life. And this story is a powerful tale of survival, resilience, and the fight against addiction, and has captured a new book that he's written called Slaying the Dragon, a South African billionaire's battle to conquer opioid addiction. And Antonio joins me on the line. And Antonio, thank you for joining me on the Sandton Times Hour.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Alex. Thanks very much for having me.
Antonio, I must tell you, it was a page turner of note. And I know you're, I think, a first-time author, and I think you've certainly told a captivating story, maybe not the story you were hoping to possibly tell at some point. But what drove you to to put this into a book and to tell the story?
I think, firstly, how easily the doctors here in South Africa prescribed the medication to me and how easily I got addicted to it. I mean, once you know about oxycodone, basically if you've had it for about 5 days, your body already becomes very dependent on it. And then when I looked for help in South Africa, and I looked at all the different rehabs, if you understand oxy for me is just the legal version of heroin. It's exactly the same, made up of exactly the same drug type and has the same effect on the body. When you go to a rehab and someone comes out of rehab and let's say they were heroin addicts and they now say that they are drug free, what they don't tell you is that they just swapped you out and moved you from one drug onto another drug. So if you're on heroin, they move you from heroin onto methadone. If you're on oxy, you move on to buprenorphine or methadone. So you don't really leave the drug rehab drug free. They just put you on a different opioid.
And I think this is the important distinction to make, is that you ended up taking this particular drug as a result of an accident that you had. This wasn't something that you willingly went into or, let's say, knowingly went into. You were prescribed this by a medical professional and you thought, well, this is what you get after having this kind of operation. And I mean, the pain is severe if you think about having any sort of operation that is that invasive. And you became an addict, not by choice, but by chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, in 2018, I hadn't even heard about oxycodone. I knew nothing about it. When you go into a hospital and you have extreme surgery and you prescribe painkillers, you don't even question what you are actually taking. In ICU, I was in ICU for 2 weeks. I was given morphine through a drip. I was given petadine injections every 6 hours. And I was given this oxycodone tablet every 4 hours. So I was given the tablet for 2 weeks while I was there. And when I left, I was given a 2-month supply. And the only time I really realized I had a huge problem was when my tablets ran out. And all of a sudden, the depression, the body sweats, the body aches, all these withdrawal symptoms started hitting me. And I didn't really realize what was going on.
Well, it sounds like you're the most high-profile story of this epidemic that broke out in the United States. I think it was towards the late 90s, into the 2000s, known as the opioid crisis. There's been multiple series and documentaries and movies made. And if anyone's listening right now and you haven't had a chance to watch any of them, I encourage you to do it because it provides such incredible context to Antonio's story. They've got Pain Hustlers, Painkiller. I mean, there's a whole list of them. We'll put them up on the website as well if you want to go check those out. But it really gives you context as to what had happened in the United States. And this is now obviously filtering over into South Africa to some extent.
One of the other reasons why I wrote the book is that if you look at and you watch some of these documentaries, it almost makes out like oxys for the poor, for the poorer communities. It hit the poorer communities in the States. And doesn't really show you that this drug doesn't discriminate. It can hit the wealthy, the poor, the middle class. And it really would be that if you are someone in an affluent position or you have wealth, it wouldn't be something that you'd want to talk about. Most people are ashamed of their addiction. The reason why I wrote the book was to show that it doesn't matter who you are, this drug can catch you.
Did you find it triggering watching any of these stories or documentaries or movies about this particular drug, having gone through what you've gone through? Not
really. I mean, I'd watched the documentaries really after I got addicted to the drug. I think one of my big saving graces is that I actually had access to the drug. It's a funny thing to say it, but if you don't have access to your legal pills, which is your oxycodone, there is no doubt that I would have found my way onto the street and I would have become a heroin addict. In your state of addiction, you'll do anything to get your fix. So if you look at a lot of those documentaries, a lot of those oxy addicts in the States, now that they've cut off the supply to the oxycodone, have all actually just become heroin addicts.
Antonio, it's a very interesting book, the way it's also structured, because you do start off telling your story about the accident that you had, the surgeries you went through, the journey you went through to try and resolve, firstly, your injury and then obviously the addiction. You then go into sort of a second part, which is telling your own story of being a child, growing up, your business challenges, some of the decisions you made, some of the businesses you built, and then it kind of comes full circle again back to where you find yourself having to now battle this particular drug. And it seems like there's a general theme that comes up over and over again, and this is this theme of risk-taking, but also in many instances sort of getting through things by the skin of your teeth. And it seems like you're somebody who enjoys taking risks. And also by, I don't know, divine intervention or luck, you manage to get yourself through a lot of things that probably most people would probably not even want to attempt. Has this entire experience changed the way you see risk, especially as somebody who works in the insurance space?
Listen, I think by nature, I'm quite happy with or comfortable with taking risk. I think as I've got older, my risk taking has become more calculated. I think in the beginning it was more, I'm going to take this risk and I'll just make sure that I'll make it work because I can't afford the failure. But I think risk taking is my positive and my negative point. You know, in taking risk, I've grown the business. In taking risk, I was attracted to the superbike racing, which is really high risk. I do live my life on the edge of my ability and my skill set. So whether it's, and if you read the book, whether it's skiing down, high-speed skiing down slopes in Austria, or racing my superbike or riding my BMX, I always seem to take the risk, and then sometimes I get caught and I pay the price.
Well, I mean, you know, it's not even just the sports things. I mean, it's even some of the business decisions, you know, opening a restaurant in Cresta, or if it was taking on, you know, a property development, having never sort of developed a property before. I mean, these are multi-million rand decisions that most people would say, well, you know what, like if I don't have any guarantees, I don't think I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of people have said, you know, Antonio, you're so lucky on how you've done in business. And my definition of luck is the very moment preparation meets opportunity. I really do think opportunities come past everyone every day. It's whether you're able to spot an opportunity and see that it is a valid opportunity. And then number two is whether you're prepared to take the risk and do something about it. And I think a lot of people are too scared to, and they miss out on opportunities. I don't really think it's luck. I think it's if you're able to spot the opportunity and then you are prepared to do something about the opportunity to turn it into something. I'm
chatting to Antonio Iozzo, businessman and author of Slaying the Dragon. We're going to take a quick break and more of this conversation straight after the break, straight right where you are.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
I'm picking up on my chat with Antonio Iozzo. He is the CEO of IUM and the author of a new book called Slaying the Dragon, a South African billionaire's battle to conquer opioid addiction, in which he recounts his battle to get himself off the painkiller OxyNorm prescribed to him after a near fatal motorcycle accident. And Antonio's on the line with me. And Antonio, just to pick up on the chat that we had just before the break, did you find that the process of writing the book was part of your recovery process?
So I actually decided to write the book while I was weaning off the oxycodone. I'd moved on to the buprenorphine patch. I really thought that a lot of people in South Africa, because if you look at the situation here, oxycodone is really being prescribed freely by our doctors. What happened in the States, I believe, is about to unravel in South Africa. My daughter went in for her tonsils last year and she was prescribed Oxy as a painkiller. One of my attorneys that worked for me went in for knee op. He was prescribed Oxy. So for me, Oxy is the go-to drug in South Africa, and the doctors are really prescribing it without really telling their patients of the inherent dangers of the addiction that follows. So, yeah, I just think it's something that people really need to know about, because you can fall into this trap quite easily without even knowing the path that you're traveling down.
Well, for those who pick up the book, you will read the story and also see how Antonio was running multi-billion rand enterprises across different sectors, but at the same time was having to manage this internal struggle of battling addiction and obviously still trying to run a business. And Antonio, how did you even do that at the best of times? Because it sounded like an absolute nightmare.
So firstly, I put up a really big facade to everyone around me, my wife, my kids, my work colleagues, what was going on behind the scenes, the severe addiction at times, the overdosing on taking too many tablets. I think it was really juggling a lot of balls on the business side. I think it was actually my saving grace. My personality is that when things start going wrong, instead of taking a step back and taking on less work, I end up just taking on more. So I decided to extend the business. I decided to build a new 11-story office block, decided to renovate my house, and I just took on more and more projects, probably in a way to distract myself from the drug addiction that I was going through and the pain of my back. I mean, knowing that my back was never actually going to be right, the addiction to the tablets, how I was going to deal with that, and not really finding a way out of that at that time, I just ended up diving into my work.
And how are you feeling right now? I mean, this hasn't totally been resolved. I mean, you haven't sort of miraculously been cured or sorted. You've just managed to get yourself off this particular pharmaceutical.
So yeah, I mean, how I manage the thing is that the accident, the motorcycle accident, fractured my T7. I broke 14 ribs, punctured both lungs. I've had 2 ops in South Africa, 3 in the States. I've had my vertebra replaced. I've then had my spine fused across 7 vertebrae. So a lot of evasive surgeries has resulted in a lot of muscle scarring and a lot of muscle spasms that I have on a daily basis. So maintaining it is really a lot of gym. I go to gym 7 times a week for about 2.5 to 3 hours a time. I've got my physio that comes to my office 3 times a week. I have massage and dry needling for about an hour and a half every time. So it's a process of just managing the pain. I know I'm never going to be back to where I was before, but pain is a funny thing that you also learn to live with it. The longer you've had it, I wouldn't say the less it affects you, but the more you're able to deal with it.
If you look back at this chapter of your life, how do you think it's changed your perspective on life, obviously on a personal and on a professional basis, but also what's been the most significant takeaway for you?
I would say my most significant takeaway is don't take your health for granted. I think I really did. I was sporty, I was healthy. I really had not had, besides a few sporting accidents, I had always recovered fully from all the accidents that I mentioned in the book. This was the first one that I wasn't able to come back from. And I think you just take your health for granted until you really run into a brick wall. The fight to get some of it back was a real struggle that I could have failed many times. And I mean, to get off the drugs, I failed many times in my attempt to wean myself and to get off the oxy.
There's also clearly a message or a bit of a blueprint for others who might be struggling with addiction, particularly high-functioning individuals. And this is something that you also pointed out at the beginning of the interview, that this is not just something that affects someone who doesn't have options. I mean, people who are highly functional individuals who are running businesses like yourself can fall prey to this particular situation that you found yourself in. And what kind of message do you relay to people who are silently battling similar demons, who are also putting up a front and trying to fight this alone?
So for me, I think the big weight that got lifted off my shoulders was when I decided to actually open up and come clean. And I first did it with my exco and all my senior staff. I just called them into the boardroom and I decided to open up and tell them about at that stage, I think it was about a 4-year addiction. And just what was going on behind the scenes, my struggles, my daily struggles with life in general. I think the book is really a step-by-step way, if someone is addicted to especially oxy or opioids, on how to actually get off. Because when you go to rehabs or to specialist doctors, they can get you up to a point, but really their go-to is for you to stay on some sort of opioid or drug for life. You're a bit of a hamster and you're just on this hamster wheel running around in circles. And I actually found a way of actually getting off. And the book is actually a step-by-step guide on how to get off.
Well, Antonio, I must tell you, it was a tremendous read. And for anyone listening, if there's a book that you want to pick up this year, this is certainly it. It's inspiring. It has funny moments. It has tragic moments. It's a truly South African business story. As I said, Antonio also delves into his life as a business person from his childhood right through to where he is now. And then also in parallel, telling the story of this addiction and dealing with this incredible accident that he had on his Ducati and dealing with the surgery and obviously the opioid addiction. It's a tremendous read. I've told a few people already to go and pick up a copy. And if you want to get one, it's called Slaying the Dragon, a South African billionaire's battle to conquer opioid addiction. It's available online also in all good bookstores. And we'll put the link up on the website as well. And Antonio Iozzo, CEO of IUM and also now author, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour. And thanks so much for sharing your story.
Alex, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Follow the Sandton Times on social media.
At Sandton Times.
And as we get into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, don't forget that if you caught something intriguing during the show but missed the details, don't worry. Head over to www.sandtontimes.co.za and explore the comprehensive show notes for a breakdown of all the highlights from this week's edition with further reading and links. Also, don't forget to connect with the Sandton Times on social media at Sandton Times, where you get some more content and some more behind the scenes and some more variety and flavor. It's always great to connect with a lot of the listeners on social media as well. And of course, there you can also join the conversation if you like, and you can do that in a myriad of ways as we do on social media. During the week, I had a chance to attend a seafood and sake tasting with the Japanese External Trade Organization, they're also known as JETRO, right here in Johannesburg. And the event was attended by Japanese dignitaries, as well as select media and many notable chefs from South Africa's leading restaurants and kitchens. And I had a chance to sample some of the soon-to-be-released produce from this event and caught up with Emil Dulk. He's the director of Liquidity, a company specializing in the marketing and distribution of super premium niche wines and spirits. And I asked him to give us a better understanding of what is sake.
Quite simply put, it's a fermented beverage brewed like beer, made from as simple as rice, koji, and water and yeast. Originally from Japan.
Give us a bit of a crash course on the beverage. How's it made? How is it structured from an alcohol perspective? I know there's also a grading in terms of the actual rice kernel that is used.
Quite a technical thing, but simply put, the rice is cooked. It's then they add a mold culture onto it, which is called koji. They then ferment it and add water to it, and out comes sake. Where it becomes different in terms of the quality perspective is that they refer to a process called polishing the rice. Now, typical rice for eating has starch all the way through the rice kernel, whereas sake rice has starch concentrated in the center. So they will typically polish the rice by grinding off or sanding off the proteins on the outside, so as to get to the closest part of the center, which holds the majority of the starch, which is then converted to sugar by the koji in order to allow it to ferment. The more you polish the rice, the more expensive it becomes because you have less of it, but the better the quality becomes. You can then add alcohol to it. Sometimes they do it in order to release flavors from the cooking process. Sometimes you want a lighter style sake and they leave the alcohol out. There's another term called genshu, where it's allowed to naturally ferment to whatever point it ferments to through a slow fermentation period, and that also results in a more floral, different style. So it's classified in several different styles compared to, based on the quality that you want to produce, the style that you want to produce, how much liquid you want to get out of it, do you want to age it, do you want to filter it. Sake is often filtered or unfiltered. It's one of the few alcoholic products that are often pasteurized or unpasteurized. So we typically won't get unpasteurized sake in South Africa because the shelf life are very short, whereas the pasteurized product has a shelf life of about a year. Similar to wine, you shouldn't open, when you open sake, you've got to drink it. So sake doesn't have a very long shelf life, just like wine. Once you open it, it starts oxidating. It's a very technical product, and it needs quite a bit of learning and educating to understand how to drink it. One of the things is the cold consumption of sake, which, as far as we as South Africans are concerned, we don't know anything about it. We drink sake warm. But some of the sakes that are produced in the daiginjo method, which means super premium, is typically consumed cold. Unlike wine, also sake isn't consumed with food or paired with food. It's typically used as an accompaniment to food, where the food takes the pride and joy. So the drinking culture is vastly different to the way that we as Westerners drink wine, beer, whiskey, or anything else.
What is the state of sake in South Africa at the moment? Because it's not something that we would commonly come across on a Saturday morning shop in the bottle store.
The state is pretty poor. At the moment, there isn't much sake being imported. What we do get is pretty much what they refer to as table sake, and it is usually imported under the table. So there's no physical regulations for it within the South African Department of Agriculture. Another thing that's prohibiting the import is the bottle size. So in Japan, they use an old measurement system called go, measured in units of 1, 4, and 8, which means that the bottle of theirs, instead of the 750 that we have in South Africa, is 720 mils. Now, that's not even used in Europe, where Europe is 700 milliliters. So it stops us from being able to import sake legally and according to the South African regulations, because it doesn't fit into any specific category, liquid-wise or bottle-wise. And unfortunately, it just means that we haven't been able to import the product up until now.
But there is a plan now to start bringing the product into South Africa.
Yep.
How have you made that possible? How's that going to happen?
A lot of issues, a lot of lobbying. Our problem is that there are a lot of government departments involved in the regulation of liquor. It's not just the liquor, it's the bottle sizes, and that's managed by the Department of Metrology. They then take their cue from the Department of Agriculture and SALBO, who's the South African Liquor Brands Association. Then there's the Liquor Board. So there's so many departments that none of them actually speak to one another, and they all refer you to different departments when you want to import products like this. So it's taken quite a lot of time and hours and emails trying to find the right people in each department, and using the classical production status and the heritage of sake in order to justify the import. They've given us a specific dispensation to import a small limited amount of product, but the problem is that unlike other liquor products, we still have to register the product every time it is imported. It has to get an import certificate. We have to stipulate to each department who we are selling the products to. We cannot sell it to retailers or to liquor stores. It can only be sold to Asian restaurants. We have to name the restaurants. We have to name which products are going to them and how much goes to them. So it's quite a complicated process, but it's a first step in the process. And hopefully with the event we did today with Jetro and the Japanese embassy, they can start lobbying the South African government to allow products and give us a little bit of a nod and say, listen, it's fine because of the heritage status of the bottles and the meaning behind it that we can actually import this product. And to start defining sake as a category, or at least rice spirit, as a category in South Africa to start importing it full time.
I mean, some people might say, this seems like just so much effort and so much work. Why even do this?
Passion. We were fortunate to be in Japan several years ago, and we got to tasting sake in Japan, and our experience was always the same as everybody's when they go into a restaurant and drink sake, drinking this slightly savory, hot mess of a drink, which even in Japan the consumption of it is declining because people are going towards better quality sake. And until you taste the options available in high quality sake, you don't truly understand the categories. And it's the same as any good wine or good beer or good spirit. If you're only used to the entry level that the market offers, it's difficult to build rapport and and passion for a drink like that. So that's why we want to do it, because we want to share what we've seen and tasted and experienced with all of the other restaurants who are opening up in South Africa, and there's plenty of them.
I mean, comments have been made today by the ambassador, by other members of JETRO, how Japanese food and Japanese culture has grown in South Africa. Things like sushi, things like anime, entertainment. All these things are, and I mean also then all the companies that we know from Japan, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Toyota, and the list goes on. Is this just another step towards bringing more sort of cultural elements of Japan into South Africa?
Yeah, 100%. Look, sushi's been around in South Africa for many, many years already. And I think the movement at this point is going towards what actual traditional Japanese cuisine is all about. If you travel to Kyoto, Osaka, and some of the smaller areas of Japan, they don't just eat sushi. And I think that's what people are starting to experience now. They're seeing there's a world outside of that. And with the ingredients that we're getting in, we need to have the drinks to accompany it. And if you really want to immerse yourself in a culture, you need to have the full circle experience. It's certainly starting that way. There's fine dining Japanese restaurants, one of which has won South Africa's best restaurant in Cape Town, fame. And there's many more restaurants like that opening in South Africa. And just today, there's at least 4 or 5 restaurateurs who are planning some sort of Japanese restaurant, whether it's from the pub type izakaya right through to fine dining. So I think people are really becoming enamored with Japan, and I think since the World Cup, people are experiencing Japan in a new way for the first time, and it's bringing the culture, the food and the drinks with them.
Where to from here in terms of the introduction of sake through official channels into South Africa?
The first process is placing an order, I suppose. We've showed about, I'd say, 9 to 11 different sakes today, including yuzu sake, which is made from the indigenous lemons, and then the umeshu, which is made from their plums. We're here today to get customer, consumer feedback on the type of products that they like and they don't like. And from there, we have to start the import process. So from a Department of Agriculture process, we've got to submit the liquid again for testing. We've got to apply for import exemption. We've got to go and ask for permission to get the product exempt from the bottle sizes. Then we've got to tell them who we're selling it to. Then we start it all over again with the next shipment.
So hopefully by early next year,
March,
people might start
we're
seeing it?
hoping February, March, yes.
Amazing. And I also noticed that you have a sparkling version of
Yes.
sake as well, a bit like our Cup Classique.
Yes, exactly. So that's a fairly new category that's been developed in Japan. And I think it's because of the popularity of champagne these days. Very much the same process of making MCC, bottle fermented. They use a little bit of dosage, which is the sugar that they add in order to create the bubbles in the bottle. And essentially much lighter than the typical MCC or champagne. So you typically bottled at 6 or 7% alcohol, but very fruity, very easy to drink. Absolutely delicious. I think it was today's absolute hit.
There was Emil, Dulk, director of Liquidity, and as you can hear, getting more South Africans to taste sake will certainly be a bit of a process, but hopefully they managed to iron out some of the challenges, and I must say the bubbly sake was certainly one worth trying, and you'll have to take my word on that one for now, but let's hope you'll get to try some sooner rather than later as we go into 2025.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the Sandton Times Hour.
So 2 Sundays ago, Sandton was lit up with the sounds of Formula One as the Red Bull show run hit the streets, featuring legendary British driver David Coulthard alongside some tremendous South African and international Red Bull athletes. Ahead of the big day that saw close on 25,000 motorsport fans line Catherine Street, Red Bull hosted an extended press conference with all the athletes, and you can watch the entire press conference on the Sandton Times YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. But given the ongoing discussions around F1 returning to South Africa, fingers crossed, I thought, why not bring you an edited, compact version of this press conference, particularly some of the questions that were posed to David Coulthard by various media. Let's take a listen.
Your prediction, are we going to get a Formula One in South Africa?
Well, I very much hope so. We've been asked a lot about it as we travel around the world, and all the drivers who are the most public voices, you know, to have a true world championship, you should be on this continent, one of the biggest continents. So I believe in the interest and the desire, and if the people that need to put signature on paper can find an agreement, then yeah, we're ready to come. We've seen in other countries where whether it's using an existing venue or whether it's building a bespoke venue, they can move very quickly. So, sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. I'm getting old, so we need to move.
Just to David, you had the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Sport at the back of the question of the F1 coming to South Africa in future. If you had 3 bullet points that you could give the Minister in terms of the things that you need to have in place as an advisor, what would those be to make sure, you need these 3 bullet points to make sure that this comes to South Africa, and 2, it comes and becomes successful on the African continent?
Yeah, so it was great to have the opportunity to talk with Gaten out at the racetrack. The 3 things you need is obviously a FIA approved facility, which is for the racetrack to get that. You need an agreement between the local government and Formula One. And then the third thing is, there is no third thing, because the people will come. There is enough motorsports enthusiasm in the country, and also, more importantly, people will travel from abroad. So we see it in every country we go, the amount of people that fly in from other countries who are fans of the sport, who are curious to not only see the Grand Prix, but to go to the country and discover about that. So, history has shown that yes, there's an investment up front, but that is returned multiple times, because you grow your tourism community around that time. So we should be here. I know some other African countries have been talking with Formula One. It's a big enough continent that we could have more than one Grand Prix like we have in America. But this is not the time to hesitate. This is the time to commit, and then we'll be here.
Question down there.
My question is for you, David. It's a throwback question. I've watched you from young racing, and you're a legend. I just want to know, how does it feel to race with 2 other legends, Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen, in your days? Thank you.
Well, I wish I didn't race against them, because they were very good. And the reality is they were a little bit better than I was. But I dreamed of one day competing at the highest level. Formula One was the highest level of single-seater racing, and part of that is to want to compete against the best and know where you come out. So, Michael still is the most successful driver in terms of world championships, in equal with Lewis Hamilton, of course, who's taken the other records like wins and poles and everything to the next level. But the next generation should always be better. Anyone who's a parent, you want your children to be better than you, and so therefore records should be continually broken through evolution of humans. But yeah, look, I've got Mika's a friend. We live very close to each other in Monaco. We do quite a few events together. I'm still annoyed at how quick he was, but I have a lot of admiration for him, and yeah, he's a good guy.
Do you ever see who can barbecue a chopper quicker than the other, or do little fun things like that?
It's interesting actually, because when we were all competing, everything was a competition. You were always kind of watching each other to try and see if you could train a little harder or ride the bicycle a bit faster. But in retirement, I think all of that has left us, and now we just, there's a genuine sort of brotherhood, if you like, of respect, and yeah, we're more likely to sit down and drink a beer and eat a burger than be doing competition.
Cool. Okay, cool. Question over there.
Firstly, the emotion of taking over from Nathan Senna, for example, when you basically replaced him as a Williams driver. And secondly, the journey you've traveled with Adrian, because I remember speaking to you in Cape Town and you said you started working with Adrian way before Formula One. Seeing you guys start Red Bull and taking it to the top, and then at some point, the journey has to end with him. Can you give us some pointers on that? And lastly, having show runs around the world, the importance of that, because there's only 23 weekends in a calendar where people can race. But Formula One has to be taken to bigger and other avenues around the world. Tell us about the importance of such events.
So first of all, with Ayrton, I was very lucky when I was a young test driver to work with Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, 3 of the great world champions of that era. And there's no question that Ayrton was more than a Grand Prix driver. He had presence that I never experienced in anyone before. You know, if he would enter a room, slowly the room would fall silent. You know, he was a pretty special guy. So in terms of being promoted from test driver to race driver, there was no way I could replace him. He was irreplaceable, but all I could do in his honour was give 100%. So throughout my career, I always gave the best that I could, and it didn't always work out. But that was, you know, my tipping of my cap to his legacy. In terms of Adrian, yeah, I've worked with him my entire career, and he has played a huge part in the development of Red Bull Racing. I think the fact that he stayed with the team longer than he stayed with any other team is testament to the family, the environment. You know, the leadership under Mr. Mateschitz was one about you know, creating opportunity and empowering you to get on and do the job. So in many ways, I guess it's inevitable, in the same way that a sports person's career doesn't last forever. And in the case of Adrian, he's seeking a new challenge. I'll wager that he won't spend 17 years with Aston Martin at his age. I actually was rather hoping he would get on his sailboat and go and enjoy all the spoils of his success, but clearly he's still motivated to keep designing. And you know, Red Bull will have a good team of people that are in place, of course, that were part of his design squad to see if they can continue to compete at the highest level. And the last question, I believe, about show runs, I think this is why, not because I'm sitting here with a Red Bull shirt on, but just sincerely, I think the Red Bull do more for promoting motorsport and creating opportunity for young athletes across the board, whether it's in what you could refer as sort of niche sports like spinning, because that hasn't developed in Europe, I believe, in the same way, but through promoting local markets and creating opportunity for publicity. You know, the world is so connected today. I've got no doubt that we'll see, you know, spinning in Europe in the future. Yeah, I think that there's an appetite for motorsport beyond just the 24 races, and that's why Red Bull do all the events they do, and Formula One are looking to do more events away from Grand Prix and more shows and things that keep people engaged and you know, feed the appetite for the fans to get access to Formula One. And I'm a fan. You know, I happen to have one of the best seats in the house for 15 years, but in the end, I'm just, you know, the little boy watching it on television back in Scotland. I'm just a slightly older boy now, but still watching it on television. And in my role today, I talk about it. And, you know, of course, I would say, if a driver makes a mistake, I'll say I wouldn't have done that, but the truth is I probably did. So, but yeah, I think it's a great sport. It's a global sport, which is a wonderful thing to be part of.
Great. Like Red Bull is, over the years, have almost planted the seed for the shade that you will not sit under. In 20, 30 years' time, when we produce more Sams and David Coulthards. In a previous life, we started F1 in schools in South Africa because we realized that around one driver, there's about 300, 400, 500 jobs. And we have a massive youth unemployment. How does this, and bringing the F1 to South Africa, how many jobs is there around you, a specific guy, and perhaps, and what would that picture look down the line, 15 years down the line? Thank you.
In a Formula One team today, there's 2,000 employees that are building the two cars. But it's not just about the two cars going to 24 Grand Prix. The technology arm of Grand Prix teams are selling that technology or sharing that technology with other communities, other businesses. You know, the automotive companies that are in Formula One, like your Ferraris and your Mercedes and what have you, you know, we have the most fuel efficient engines in the world today. That goes into the road cars of the future. So there's many examples of how the sport isn't just about the entertainment on track, but it's actually driving change in communities. You know, 2026, we're going to have half of our propulsion will come from the electrical element of the engines. We'll have 100% biofuels. You know, the industry is targeting net zero in 2030, and it will achieve its goals because it always does. Because failure is not an option in our industry. So, you know, we have 24 immovable deadlines around the world. 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever time the race starts, it starts, and everyone's on the grid. So it breeds a culture of people getting things done. And you know, this is a rich country of ideas, intelligence, and creativity. And I'm sure they would create jobs, opportunity around it. And if you have a permanent facility, then like we have at Silverstone, you end up having a university there, which is teaching the young kids, you know, different roles, whether it's in electronics, whether it's in design, whether it's in the manufacturing side. And that's creating jobs for the future, because that's your greatest asset, is your people. So, you know, I heard that there's a lot of unemployment here, and I'm sorry for that. But, you know, there's going to be, you know, a lot of talent within that unemployment that needs to be engaged.
DC, this one's for you, just bringing it back to females in motorsport. We have the F1 Academy. You understand the extremities of being an F1 driver. How far are we from getting a female in the F1 seat?
Well, we know from all the research there's no physical or mental reason why women can't compete at that level, and there just hasn't been the numbers. You know, historically, there's been thousands of young boys going into karting, and there's been a handful of young girls. But that is changing. You know, my son is racing karts in the UK. He's racing this weekend, and there's probably 10 girls now racing throughout the various formulas. You know, when I grew up, there was maybe one. So what I'm personally involved in is a foundation called More Than Equal, which is identifying young girls globally and giving them the support that a Max would have had from his father, or a Lewis would have had, or Charles, whoever your favourite driver is, and trying to guide them through their development. And it's that teenage years that's the really crucial era. If anyone who's got teenagers, you'll know that's the difficult time, when they're going from, you know, young girls to women, or from young boys to men. And that's when sometimes people who've got great talent suddenly get distracted or lose their focus. So we're believing that in the next decade we should be able to guide some of the great talent towards Formula One. And of course, the Formula One team, if they had a fast woman in their team, would be delighted. You know, that's like a marketing dream, as well as, you know, ultimately it's a stopwatch game. So it's not about tokenism, it's about being fast enough. And I believe that, you know, in my lifetime, we will see that.
There was a question over there with the white shirt.
What pointers can you give to aspiring drivers in Africa? And what do you think is the key thing that challenge scouts look for in a driver?
Well, you definitely got to get out in a kart as soon as possible. And the key thing that people look for is the stopwatch. It's about speed. And you know, raw speed. Whenever you see young kids, it's always amazing when you put them in little fun karts. Instinctively, they know how to correct the steering. It's just part of human beings. You know, it's almost like it's been part of us, you know, for so long. But you're looking for the ones that obviously have the speed and the work ethic and the focus. In the end, you know, there's a lot of talented people out there, but it comes down to those that are prepared to work hard and develop that talent.
Sorry. Looking at you, bro.
Sorry. David, just on Kyalami again, having gone around it on Friday, and with your vast experience of other track layouts, it's currently sitting at a grade 2 FIA. What does it need? Where, from a technical and safety standard, does it need to improve to get to the grade 1 for MotoGP and Formula 1?
Yeah, that's a great question, of which I'm not qualified to answer. I can only imagine it's certain runoff areas, because in terms of the track, it's a fantastic track. It's challenging. You've got blind corners, you've got high speed to corners, the elevation change. You know, there's not one corner on the track that you would say that's not particularly good. You know, they all have their unique challenge. So I personally would have loved to have raced in Kyalami as it sits. We go from Monte Carlo, Baku, Singapore, somewhere else probably I'm forgetting, where there's no runoff, and we go to modern facilities where there's so much runoff the spectators can hardly see the car. So in my mind, there must be a middle ground where the FIA can say, is there enough impact structure to mean that if a car has throttle sticking and brake failure, that there will be sufficient, impact absorption to give a high likelihood that there won't be an injury. Then that can only be a question of barriers. I'm sure from a Formula One point of view, there would be things like, well, how many spectators can we get there, and all that sort of good stuff. But none of that is insurmountable. Look, they've built grandstands here for this event. So, that's just a question of where there's a will, there's a way.
So that was voice of legendary British driver David Coulthard answering a string of questions from various media, and fingers crossed, as I said, we may see F1 in South Africa, hopefully, back again in the near future. How incredible would that be? We can only hope. And with that, that's all we have time for this week on the Sandton Times Hour. As always, available on all good podcast platforms as well. Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Podcast Party, and so many more. Feel free to share it, subscribe, and do all those good things. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za and connect on social media @Sandton Times. And of course, hop onto the website, www.sandtontimes.co.za. And if you enjoyed that Formula One content, make sure you go onto the website and onto the social media channels. Posted some fantastic videos of that RB7 racing up and down Catherine Street in Sandton. It is incredible. Thank you to all my guests who made the time to be on the show this week, and of course the teamwork that makes all of this happen. It doesn't happen by magic. It happens by a lot of people pulling together and making sure you get the best content every single week. Thank you for listening, and God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.